like to call to order this meeting of the Raleigh City Council. Nice to see you back, Mr. Bowers. We'll start off the meeting with the invocation from Pastor Olden Thornton, Raleigh International Church. Yes, come on up to the podium.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this opportunity, Lord, to reflect your wisdom, your understanding. But more than anything, Lord, I pray for all these people around this table as they're helping to govern, to manage our lives so that we can live a more peaceable life. So I thank you for every issue that's presented today. Thank you for every question, every idea. Lord, let this be a meeting that will unite unity and not division. But we thank you now. Thank you for your grace. Thank you for this time, and we give it over to you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Ms. Crowder, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have one certificate of appointment today, Jennifer Lampman, who I just met. There she is. Do you want to come on down? Jennifer has agreed to accept appointment by the Raleigh City Council to serve a 2-year term on the Planning Commission. So I want to thank you so much for donating all of your time and talent to the city. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay, that takes us on to the consent agenda. So far, I only have one item to be pulled, item G1. Are there any other items anyone wishes to be pulled at this time? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So item G1, I know that Ms. Stewart pulled this, and perhaps Mr. Thompson too.
Yes, so I just wanted to make sure that we have a fuller understanding of the property owner's interest in this moving forward this way. I feel like there was a little bit of a narrative that was missing there, and I'd love to fill in those holes.
So, this
Wayne.
is a proposed...
Wayne.
Thank you. This project was previously brought to the council as a drainage assistance project, and during our analysis, we found that the cost of the upgrades would exceed considerably the value of the homes. So the recommendation is to, instead of proceeding with a drainage upgrade, which would require another downstream upgrade, to mitigate by purchasing the 2 homes. Both homeowners are amenable to the buyout. They are both long-term residents in those homes, and so would don't like leaving, but they're amenable to it given the circumstances of the situation.
I'm good. Do you have any more
Yeah,
questions?
and so Mayor, this is in my district. I have visited these homes before, and one right after the flooding event. It wasn't a hurricane either. They do have severe flooding inside the home for certain rain events, so I would move for approval.
Second.
Okay, a motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that takes us down to the report of the Planning Commission.
Oh, sure. What happened? Y'all having a problem? Here, come on in.
Okay. Before we start, thank you. Let's remember that we already have 5 or 6 scheduled for October 1st, public hearing.
Yes, great. So,
Oh, okay.
Okay. But we'll go ahead and take these one by one because they're not all public hearing dates.
so we have an action-packed
Yeah.
Planning Commission agenda. It's been a hot planning summer, and there's many items to report out.
Ha ha.
That's right, I'm back.
He's
Anyway,
back.
sorry. So, as you said, 5 items for October 1st, so let's go to the first item, which in this case is a request for a time extension. This is the cottage court text change, which would amend the permitted density and allow for fee simple cottage court unit ownership by allowing the subdivision of the land into the units. Planning Commission would like some additional time to review this before sending back a recommendation. They've requested, I believe, 90 days.
Motion to
You-
approve.
Second.
I have one question. Do you know, do they need 90 days? Could they do it in a shorter amount of time?
Defer to the chair.
This came from text change, and I'm not on text change, so I don't really know the answer to that question. 60 days is probably sufficient, but I don't know.
Motion
Looking
and
at
a second.
Travis, he's, do you think 60 days?
I think they asked for 90 days just in the abundance of caution. I think there was an acknowledgement that they'd have this done well in advance of that.
Well, the only thing I would ask would be some of us that will not be here after 90 days would like to have an opportunity to look at this since it's been in the committee and it's been discussed before.
So if they can do 60 days?
Sure.
Would be great.
Would that be a substitute motion then?
Yes. If you'll accept
Okay, I'll
that.
second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for 60-day extension. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Next item is TC 419, erosion and sedimentation control, amends Part 10A of the UDO to alter when an erosion and sedimentation control plan is needed, clarify which land is to be included when calculating the total area of land disturbance, and reorganize Section 944 to improve its readability. Planning Commission has reviewed this and unanimously recommended approval on August 27th, and a recommended public hearing date is September 17.
Okay,
Motion to approve.
Second.
all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Next item is to rezone a property currently zoned for industrial heavy, a little over 2 acres down in the industrial area south of Hoke Street along South Bloodworth. This was deemed by the Planning Commission to be inconsistent with the future land use map, but consistent with the comprehensive plan overall. The South Central CAC and the Planning Commission have both recommended for approval. The Planning Commission did so unanimously. Public hearing date of October 1st has been suggested.
Can we move it to the,
Can we move this one to the 15th of October?
Yes.
Okay,
motion to approve October 15th.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Next item is 510 Grove Avenue. This is a request to rezone just over half an acre from R6 with the special residential parking overlay to R10 with the same overlay. This is consistent with the future land use map and the comprehensive plan. The West CAC reviewed this and recommended denial of the case on the 6-4 vote. The Planning Commission has recommended approval on a 5-1 vote. And again, public hearing date could be October 1st or some other date at the pleasure of the council.
Okay, this was another one that I wondered if we could move to October 15th. Do you think there's any problem with that? I see him nodding.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Motion to approve October 15th.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Okay. The next zoning case is located on the 200 block of Fayetteville Street, and it's a request to rezone 1.5 acres from DX5, DX7, and DX12 to DX40 shopfront with conditions attached. Central CAC reviewed this and recommended approval of 13 to 5, although they placed some conditions on their vote, not all of which are actually reflected in the zoning conditions. The RHDC has recommended approval with conditions, and the Planning Commission has recommended denial on a 4-2 vote. I've been informed by the applicant that the necessary signatures on the conditions have not been obtained in time for today's meeting, so scheduling this public hearing needs to be deferred for 2 weeks.
Okay,
I agree, Mac told me that, but what was the reasons for the Planning Commission's votes?
I think the no votes, well, the denial votes fell into 2 categories. One, the RHDC made fairly specific recommendations that the applicant did not fully meet. And then there was a general objection not held by everyone to upzoning this property to 40 stories without any specificity about what's intended or what would be built on the site.
So, you need us to bring it back in 2 weeks to set the public hearing?
Yes,
After the conditions are signed?
yes.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll bring that back as a special item in 2 weeks. Okay, comp plan amendment CP 719.
Sure. This is citizen-initiated request to modify the City of Raleigh street plan as to realign and redesignate a proposed segment of Sumner Boulevard between Capitol Boulevard and Old Wake Forest Road. Planning Commission has requested a 90-day extension for review. The new deadline would be December 22nd, if that were to be granted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
All right. Next item is another rezoning. This is the Russ Bus site adjacent to Raleigh Union Station. And it's a request to rezone 1 3/4 acres from DX12 to DX40 with no frontage and conditions attached. Is being deemed by the Planning Commission to be consistent with the comprehensive plan and future land use map, but inconsistent with urban form. The Planning Commission has recommended approval on a 6-0 vote. Central CAC recommended approval on a 16-1 vote. And RHDC provisionally has recommended approval with some provisions related to their involvement in the Section 106 review, which would occur under NEPA if federal money is used. The applicant has requested a public hearing date of September 17th.
Okay. I think they want that so they can get their signed conditions in, so.
Okay.
Okay, motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Great. Moving on, another comprehensive plan amendment, citizen-initiated request to the future land use map, a change in designation from office research and development to moderate density residential and community mixed use. There's 6 parcels totaling over 23 acres involved in this request. Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval, and the North CAC recommended approval, but on a split 6-5 vote. Possible public hearing date is October 1st or a different date, should the council wish to choose one.
Yeah. Question on the 6-5 vote
Yes.
from the Planning Commission?
Oh,
that
no,
was
that's
a
from the North CAC.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, the Planning Commission vote was unanimous.
So can we move?
Okay.
How many we just put on? We put,
We haven't put any on the first yet.
Oh, we've already got
Oh,
5
we've
on
already
the
got
first.
five.
Yeah.
And we,
Yeah.
um,
and they're big ones.
and we just, no, you're right, Go Triangle was the other one. We can put this on the first.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
another day.
Motion to approve October 1.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now we got
Opposed?
6, right?
That gives us 6, yeah.
Okay.
But then there's one more, yeah.
And then the last item, another comprehensive plan amendment, also citizen initiated, to amend the future land use map. This is located at Blue Run Lane. Change in designation from rural residential to moderate density residential. Planning Commission has requested a 90-day extension for review, which would give them a new deadline to report out of December 20th.
Okay,
Motion to approve.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes the Planning Commission report.
Thank you.
Matt can,
And Mayor and Council, we could for a moment just say thank you to Roger Walden for helping us in the interim
Roger.
capacity as
Thank
well.
you.
Roger.
Yeah,
Roger.
thank you for your,
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to special items. The first is Healthy Neighborhoods Report from the July 1st meeting.
so I'll just pick that up. It came out of my committee. As you can see here, it was, committee recommends authorizing staff to draft a text change for Planning Commission's consideration and recommendation back to full council to remove the minimum parking requirements for non-residential as well as residential uses in the DX zoning.
That a motion?
Yeah, that's a motion, sure.
Second.
all right.
To remove the parking requirements for non-residential.
Parking minimums for all
Minimums.
parking downtown.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a question for staff, and that is, I'm trying to see the outline of where this exactly is, because we know we have some single-family neighborhoods that parking is almost impossible at this point. And I'm not sure if if we're allowing more and more housing with no parking requirements. So who can tell me where the outline, I'm just trying to find the outline I mean, there's some parts of Boylan Heights, there's parts of Mordecai, there's parts of
Parts of South
Oakwood that you
Park.
can't even, South Park, you can't even get through
So I
with a
guess,
car, much less
so we understand minimum parking standards changing,
Right.
but we don't want to put an impact on the neighborhoods who are already feeling the overflow from daily parking, not related to their residential uses.
This isn't an ideal way to show it, but essentially, that's good. This area here in purple is the extent of the DX district where this would apply. And so in general, no single-family neighborhoods on their own are impacted by the text change, proposed text change, but if there's concerns about spillover parking, there are areas, Zone DX, that are in close proximity to some single-family neighborhoods that would potentially could be subject to spillover impacts should there be adverse impacts from the text change. So does this answer the question?
Yeah, we're just, the part below where the drain goes through, is gonna have impacts on Boylan Heights, which has already got, it's an older neighborhood, and a lot of the, some of them don't have driveways, so you already have all the residents parking on the street. So if you're allowing a, much more dense residential tower right there, then without any parking requirements at all,
So this sort of general area over here.
yeah.
Yeah, but also in the areas near Shaw University and South Park, as we talk about no parking minimums in development there, that will also have an impact on that.
So maybe, I think all of us want people to use transit the way we want them to, but maybe we're being a little premature in bringing this full to the applied option here. Maybe we should do it a little more organically, so we are looking at alternatives in and around the area
do think
where
we need
there's
to.
already parking problems, overflow parking problems.
So the beauty about this text change and this idea is that we aren't the first to try it. There have been many communities across North Carolina, but across the nation, who are getting rid of mandatory parking requirements under city code, in part because it does incentivize more folks to build missing middle housing in these areas, and because the private sector will fill the gaps anyway, and our work then is duplicitous. So I don't think this is anything necessarily groundbreaking, but I do think it's one more tool in our toolbox to get more housing in the DX area. So I would love to see this move forward, but I definitely hear your concerns, and I just don't know that we're going to see those play out as other communities haven't either.
So, Madam, can I take my turn?
Yes.
I think you've raised an excellent point, and I actually wish I had thought about this more closely, the edge conditions that I have, and the area in particular, Councilor Branch has raised, for me, is around the Prince Hall District, which is a designated historic overlay district where we've already said we want to try to preserve the residential character. And of course, you may recall back in 2015 when we did the downtown remap, we inexplicably remapped part of the Prince Hall Historic District to DX, which makes no sense whatsoever. And so that certainly would lead to even more conflicts if we were saying not only are we going to zone the historic residential neighborhood to DX, and then in conflict with the HOD regulations, and then put on top of that the elimination of parking. So I think there are some edge conditions here that we need to take back into committee. So I would make a motion that we send this back to Healthy Neighborhoods and look at that more closely.
Second.
Okay.
You know, I think the problem, I know the intent here, but the problem is that there's already streets we have here in the city where some of the homes don't have driveways. So they park on both sides of the streets, and it's extremely difficult at times for our sanitation trucks or our fire trucks, EMS, to get down there, and I think that could be very problematic in the future. So I think going back to committee would be a good idea.
And also keep in mind too, we're removing parking due to bike lanes in some of the areas. So that's going to move traffic to some of those side streets already.
And I would like to comment on the downtown desire for more housing, and the discussion we heard in committee and from DRA was that, and this is based on staff's research in Durham, is that the tall buildings are going to provide their own off-street parking within their buildings, but it's the small parcels that Durham found could never get redeveloped because they couldn't do off-street parking and do a small footprint building. So I think the advantage of this change in terms of eliminating parking downtown is not going to have any impact on tall buildings. They will all provide their own off-site parking. The real advantage here is for smaller parcel redevelopments, and that may end up being a residential use, but probably won't be.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to send this back to committee. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next we have a pawnbroker license. This was pulled by Mr. Branch at the last meeting.
Yes, I had a chance to talk to the actual owner of the property and everything, and all my questions were answered, so I move for approval.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that brings us next to the 2030 Comprehensive Plan Update, CP2C19, Economic Prosperity and Equity.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
This is the third installment of the larger comprehensive plan update. You've seen a few of these pieces in the past, and actually this item was on public hearing back in July. So the hearing was conducted and then closed. There were some questions that came from council members, or an indication of questions at that time. And staff is ready to answer any questions that council members might have. There is no additional timing aspect to this request. So if the council would like to continue conversation here or in another venue, staff will be available to answer those questions. So just as a general reminder, this update portion is the third one, and it covers economic development, housing, and then also there's an insert on public participation. Happy to answer any questions about moving forward.
Oh, okay. But all of these sections we're going to act on individually.
The way that they've been presented is in individual pieces. So this is the third piece that contains 2 chapters and an insert. That's correct.
Okay. Did anyone have any specific questions about this part of the comp plan update?
I had some requests from council members of needing additional time to look at aspects of this. If it can be done here at the table, great. If you'd rather move it into committee, that's okay too.
So I do have some items, and particularly under housing, I've done a deep dive there and had a long list of what probably are technical questions, but we never had a chance to get the staff meeting scheduled, so I want to do that. Likewise, the new section related to public participation is a big improvement over what we've had before. The good news is that since we had this discussion about including this new section, there's some new policy guidance out from APA that goes even further to talk about high-quality public participation. So I'd like to try to incorporate some of the new APA policies into this comp plan update.
Are they significantly different than the ones we have?
Yep. Yes, they are.
Okay.
So are you suggesting that we hold this in?
No, put it in committee.
Order for
Okay.
Okay,
At
so
some
either
point,
way.
we're going to have a public conversation about whether we want to add new equity and empowerment elements to our new comp plan update section on public participation. So I don't think we can, I think it has to, that conversation has to happen in committee. It really can't happen at the table because we're going to have more public input.
That's fine. I just said we haven't seen the APA items that you're talking about. So.
Right.
So if we can just move this in the growth and natural resources, and Travis, since there's many pieces here, I might suggest that we sit down prior and sort of figure out a strategy of how to move the pieces forward, because there's a lot of information and items here.
Yes, ma'am, be happy to.
2019.
Thank you.
Now, Russ said he wanted it in healthy neighborhoods earlier. I don't know if that's true.
Oh.
You
Yep,
just- you
but
got
I'm
a lot.
happy to send it to
You got a lot on
GNR.
your plate, so I
Completely
don't
up to-
know. You want to take
well-
in healthy neighborhoods?
Well,
Are we trying to have this done by December 1st?
Oh,
well,
that,
the
please.
truth is,
I'm saying we
this,
are.
Just move it into growth and natural resources.
this is an important conversation. It's not one we're going to rush through. It's one I think we do need to get public input on. And again, we are adding a whole new section to the comp plan on public participation. And so
Okay.
it makes sense that we would have lots of public participation on this thing.
So is it going to growth and natural?
Yes, I'll take
Okay.
growth and natural resources.
Okay.
That's fine.
Rezoning Z319 Harrington and Peace.
This item was discussed at your last meeting and was held to allow the applicant to offer new zoning conditions. So public hearing has been conducted, has been closed. The applicant has offered new zoning conditions. So I can talk very briefly about the case if you'd like to hear from the applicant. That might be productive here. This is a request to rezone almost 3 acres of property from DX12 shopfront and DX12 to DX40 shopfront conditional use. And DX40 conditional use. This is consistent with the comprehensive plan. You have a favorable recommendation from the Planning Commission and the North Central CAC. We do have the signed conditions, so you may act upon the case if you wish.
So just a question for clarification.
Yes, sir.
The one condition about the traffic study, that will be done at site review, and that includes not just this property, but other properties?
Yes, sir, that's my understanding.
And so just to be clear, what we're doing is putting a condition regarding level of service at nearby intersections so that we have to meet that level of service or we don't go to 40 stories?
That's correct.
Okay, so it would be something, so it's quite conceivable that we would end up with a building that's less than 40 stories,
Dependent upon traffic study.
depending upon the traffic study. Okay, thank you.
So I'd like to move for approval.
And I'll second that, but I also want to thank Kane Realty and Bonner Gaylord in particular for all the conversations that have happened about housing affordability, that have happened about mitigating the impacts of trips generated by this and the other projects we just heard about that are committed to in the conditions. Also commitment to making sure there's enough right-of-way for high-quality bicycle facilities through there, and the commitment to high-quality streetscapes. So this is really going to be a pedestrian-friendly frontage.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Was there further discussion?
No. I'm
No.
good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, and that brings us to Police Review Board options.
Can I, did we read the consistency statement on that last
Oh, yes. Oh,
session?
sorry.
Oh, hold on.
I was asleep on the job myself until
I can just incorporate it if,
I move to approve, I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated September 3rd, 2019, contained in the agenda material to approve the zoning amendment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
you.
good afternoon. We are waiting for the presentation to come up, but while we're waiting, I'll just go ahead and get started. This report is in relation to the presentation made on May 21st of this year in reference to police review options. We are looking to engage the community and obtain their feedback, and so we've got some options here. And looks like it's coming up now. So I'll take- Okay, wonderful. Let's see. Okay. So the three options we presented on May 21st were the Police Oversight Board, which was full enforcement power, the Police Review Board, which was more an advisory group, and then the Office of Citizen Advocacy. You all gave us specific steps to follow up on. We're going to talk about number 2, which is conducting a community engagement process to obtain resident feedback. We are proposing 5 community dialogue sessions at the sites listed here. They'll be from 6 to 7:30, and we will serve refreshments. Before I go into what that day is going to look like or what that event will look like, I do want to point out the International Association for Public Participation Spectrum, or IAP2. We're going to use this model in terms of creating the programming for the community engagement sessions. But the spectrum consists of 5 elements: informing the community, consulting, involving, collaborating, and empowering. It gives us the opportunity to keep promises to the community in terms of sharing information, making sure that they are well informed on the topic, and then consulting with them, obtaining their feedback. And that's exactly what we'll do with these community engagement sessions. And then collaboration and empowerment. And this is the industry standard and best practice for public engagement. So the interactive session will be hosted by the Human Relations Commission. And in those sessions, we don't want the typical lecture Q&A. We want to make this more interactive, and we want to give residents more options than just Q&A to submit their feedback. So they can submit their feedback in writing. They can participate in the Q&A. They can also participate in the roundtable sessions. Human Relations Commission will be working on what those questions look like. And in addition to that, we want to do something fun and exciting, which is what would you do stations, giving residents the opportunity to give direct feedback on what would they do in these specific scenarios. We want to make sure that it's accessible and that we have Spanish interpretation available as well. So our next steps are to coordinate the dates for the sessions. We listed the locations that are proposed on the slide, but we haven't been able to set dates yet because we're coming off of summertime and kids are just going back to school. So camps and community activities kind of kept us from scheduling, but we're looking to get this scheduled mid to late October. And in the meantime, we're going to work with the Human Relations Commission to create the facilitator's guide and really set up the format for the sessions. So I will entertain any feedback you have.
Okay, if I may. So I have a couple of concerns. One is that this is fairly vague about what will be discussed during these sessions. We've had several people come before council to talk about oversight, and there are a lot of different ideas. We've had PAC come and speak. We've had Sheila Alamin Khashoggi come and speak, who represented a different group and a different philosophy and a different approach. So I really do appreciate, the thought going into the citizen engagement piece, but the thing that I'm concerned about are the details of what exactly will be presented as points of discussion during these engagement sessions. So I was wondering if we could have staff come back to us with more details about what will be discussed and before moving forward with this.
Absolutely. And one of the next steps listed there is to work with HRC on the facilitator's guide. Going back to that IAP2 spectrum, it's important to get resident feedback on how we should approach this. So that's why we're utilizing the Human Relations Commission, because they are residents in the community and they're going to help create what this is going to look like. So we can absolutely get that to you before we move forward in terms of next steps.
Okay.
So I have Go ahead.
I was going to say, first of all, thank you for coming back and bringing this to us. I also think we had someone to come before us to talk about an advocacy position within the city. So I think those are the three options that were actually presented, not just those two. So thank you for that. And providing us the information, again, some of the details of how it's, but also there is another PowerPoint I know that was presented previously. Will that be used when you first presented, I think a couple months ago, as far as the three items, and you looked at best practices from across the state? Will that be used as part of the presentation to the community?
Absolutely. We want to inform the community on those three options. So there's probably many folks that didn't have a chance to attend that council meeting or read that presentation. We want to educate them on those three options, as well as give them the opportunity to provide any feedback or other options. We've heard from other folks who've had different ideas. This is a great idea to come together and to compile all of those ideas. So the three options in the presentation, we're going to allow for Q&A, we're going to have roundtable discussions, and then also be able to track the information that folks put up on the wall or put in writing in terms of it. So not just the three options, but any other options that might be presented that we haven't heard yet or even thought about, we can include those.
Okay, thank you.
So Mayor, I'd like to make a couple of comments, if I may.
Sure.
So thank you for the work that you've done in putting this together. So what I'm going to say has nothing to do with what you just presented. My position on this has not changed. I am not in favor of a police accountability task force. Therefore, I am not in favor of moving ahead with this endeavor. I think it would undermine our police department, and I also believe I represent North Raleigh, which is in excess of 70,000 people, and they have not contacted me. The folks are not willing to have this sort of situation because they respect our police department and the job that they do, and they see no value in this.
Well, this is part of, thank you, one of my questions, and that is, we know that people are going to come to your meetings that have a certain opinion, but there are a lot of people that, you know, as Mr. Thompson said, don't support an oversight board. They're probably not going to come to a meeting. So how are you going to engage them? I mean, how are you going to get both sides of this conversation?
Well, it's challenging to engage folks who have no interest in this particular topic, but again, increasing the opportunities for education and letting them know that this is something where we require your feedback. You may not feel like it's an issue, but we're inviting you to come to the session and to be a part of it. So it's about how we promote it, and it's about increasing opportunities for community engagement. We're going to utilize other avenues that are existing within the city in terms of community engagement. So our CACs are always an avenue, but other community groups that we may not have tapped would be a way that we can say, hey, this is something where we'd like your feedback, just to raise awareness.
Well, I'd suggest maybe you reach out to the wives, husband, and children of the police officers. I think they'd have a insight that the rest of us don't have as to how that job affects our officers. I also am not really sure why we don't have the legal authority to do this. So I don't want to make false representations to the public that you're getting to pick three choices and you pick one, and we don't have the authority to do it. So it seems a little, I don't know what the word is, but.
So if I
So-
were, oh, go ahead.
So Mayor,
Yeah.
you need to go first.
I was just going to say, so if I recall from the May 21st session, when we talked about this, we presented pros and cons, and you're absolutely right. That was one of the cons presented, is that we would have to go through the state legislature in order to have approval to do this. And I think we were going to get some feedback from the attorney on what that would look like and what we would need to do in order to do it. I think the idea is not necessarily to say, here are your three options. We really want to understand what the community thinks about this, and if there's something that we've missed, or maybe a different direction that we take. So it's really more about engaging the community on the topic in terms of what we've presented.
So I've looked at your list here. Do you feel like geographically you've covered the entire city in terms of engagement so that you get all different kinds of perspectives?
I think we started with 5 sites. to do just that. Now, I mean, this is a very large city. It's hard to gather everyone, but we did look at inclusiveness, and we did look at location in terms of where we wanted to have the sites. We are open for feedback in terms of if there's a site that we should include and didn't include, we can do that as well.
So, Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I just want to make a comment about what Councilor Thompson has said, and obviously I represent the whole city of Raleigh, so I represent the same people you do, and I know they don't have the same level of concerns, but I would hope that if I went to any citizen anywhere in the city of Raleigh and said, we're going to try to have a community conversation about what our values are and how we can find common ground to come up with something that is going to be better for all of us. There's not going to be winners and losers in this thing. There's going to be something that makes sense to all of us to do to make all of us safer. Yeah, and that's what I hope is going to happen here.
Thank you. There's, and I'm sorry I wasn't at the meeting where this was discussed. So it says, following discussion, the next following steps in explore an enhanced internal affairs process. I know we've talked about that, changing where complaints are filed. Is that something?
We're working
y'all
on
are
that
working
anyway.
Okay.
That's
that
a
would,
separate activity.
oh, okay. I think that would be helpful. Okay.
Can I ask a question? The 5 sites, is there one in each of the 5 council districts?
I believe the locations are spread out throughout the city.
You're missing one district.
One district,
Yeah.
okay.
You're missing
Which one is that?
district, I want to say A.
No, Sir Thomas in
Sir
A.
Thomas.
I think you might be missing
JC's
E.
E is missing.
E.
Yeah, which is, yeah. I mean, J.C. Park is close to part of E, but part of E goes all the way out to Briar Creek, so I don't think.
Yeah. E is
I have the same situation. The Green Road is at the very southern end of my district. There's nothing for 95% of the rest of the district.
Yeah, so you may want to consider adding some more sites.
Okay.
Are you going to use any online or any different kind of tools other than meetings just to get feedback?
Oh, absolutely. I
Okay.
think we can explore some of the online community engagement platforms to use that might be helpful for folks that can't make it to the meeting.
Yeah. And my last comment, one thing I heard that I appreciate is you said these were the 3 that were presented earlier and we talked about, but a statement you made was there may be something out there that we haven't seen or heard yet,
Yes.
and that can come from the community. So I think that's key too, as far as this conversation, that may put us in a path that I think we have to look at what's the intent of what is being asked, and there may be a different vehicle in order to reach that intent. So I appreciate that.
And I'd like to piggyback off of that and what Councilor Thompson said. The Police Oversight Board is not a new idea. Durham passed theirs in the 80s. This is something that's been out there for a while, so I'm hesitant to send a tool or a series of tools that are similar out to get community input on when we've heard for quite some time how folks feel about it. But if we can open up that conversation, also piggybacking off of what Councilmember Cox said earlier, to talk about our goals and kind of bigger picture of what we're trying to achieve here, I'm much more comfortable in sending this out to public comment. But if we're just talking about these 3 possibilities of a police oversight board, which we have heard for decades about, I'm very hesitant.
Well, could in terms of sending you out, would it not behoove us to let them go out and hear what the community might offer that we haven't thought of at this table or that hasn't been presented? Could we not leave this open so that they present what we've heard, but they allow this cooperative nature in terms of what people might be thinking that we haven't heard of? I don't think we can continue to delay it. I think we have to push it out there to get feedback so we'll know what direction to go in.
And I think that's where Councilmember Cox and I just quickly talked about the frame. And so bringing that back and making sure we are talking about what are the goals. and getting additional insight into this. Otherwise, I do think we're kicking the can down the road and just avoiding having hard conversations here at the table about how we want to move forward as a city.
So David, let me make sure I understand this. So in terms of them moving forward, you are okay with them moving forward as long as the scope is broader, but we don't know what the scope is because the scope could be determined by things that have not yet been presented that they're going to get from the public, and then you want them to come back to us? I'm just trying to understand the process.
Well, what we've seen here in this presentation is kind of unspecified about what will be discussed in these sessions. And so I'm just asking for more specifics about what will be discussed in these sessions.
I mean, they're discussing the 3 different
But I think there's
options that
like
they'll voted on in
within
May.
these 3 options, what kinds of details are we presenting? Are we presenting, yes, no type options, or is there a more nuanced approach to this?
So are you basically asking to see the slides maybe that they're planning to use and that kind of thing? So
Right.
Yeah.
Right. What are the materials that are going to be presented at these sessions? That would be good to review, I think, before we move forward.
I agree.
So the original intent was to have the exact same slide presentation that was presented here, to share that with the public and then obtain their feedback on that specific presentation.
Well, again, I mean, in thinking back, I don't have the presentation in front of me, so I'm just thinking back about what was there, is that I don't think that presentation really incorporates some of the ideas that have been presented to us by various members of the public.
Well, I think that's our job. I mean, we could probably vote on this now, frankly. But, we've heard more than anybody over the past few years about this, and I think we are perfectly capable of coming to a decision. I think, the point, I'm not sure. Obviously, the point of going out and having the meetings to get more feedback and the potential to hear ideas that we haven't heard yet. So I don't know that it needs to be too scripted. I think the last presentation you made was good, and certainly a good foundation to have those discussions. I mean, people aren't going to be filling out bubble sheets. They're going to be sitting at tables having discussions about it.
So the other thing, again, I don't think this is a good idea, but I would say that, Marshall, could you listen to me for just a second? Yes, sir. Okay. So if in fact you go ahead and do this, which I'm not in favor of again, is that names need to be written down and addresses of where these folks live that attend these meetings. Notes need to be taken, because from what we have seen previously, some of these folks may attend every single meeting to try to dominate the conversation and sway it. And I don't think, to have an open dialogue, if you don't have that, you've really got nothing.
Okay. I think you were trying to assist us. Could you, whatever y'all need to say, go ahead.
Right, and we were just discussing that we're going to take all of these ideas and we're going to bring them back. So we're going to have the detailed outline in terms of the presentation. We're going to examine locations and then come back and present this information to you all.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I ask one last question on this grid that you have for the public participation spectrum? I think it's real important to let people who are planning to get involved with this know where exactly we think this is falling. Is it, is it consult or is it collaborate? Or so are we going to be very upfront about that so that they understand? Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So if I could just try to make sure I interpret so we're all on the same page. What we'll do is at a future council meeting, we'll bring back to you the framework and the specific meeting design of how that would work and potential dates and the rollout specifically, and present that to you, and then you can make the decision, and then we can advance. Is that correct?
In a detailed agenda, what's going to happen during
Right.
these meetings.
So what we're hearing, provide to you the framework and the materials before we send them out to you. Then you'll bless that, and then we'll go.
I think that's what the majority
We'll
is saying.
bless it or not bless it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
I just want to be clear what we're doing next.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, that brings us to report recommendation of the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. 2 items on your agenda today, and then I'd like to take a moment to do 2 other things that are not on your agenda. The first is a presentation from the Raleigh Police Department related to our youth programs. Chief Cassandra Deck-Brown is here to present you that update and to share with you some upcoming events that we're pretty excited about. So give them a moment to prepare the materials and make the presentation.
Interesting segue, to say the least. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. On occasion, each of you at some point in time has asked me and other staff about the various programs that we offer with the Raleigh Police Department. And so what we wanted to do throughout the summer was really sort of capture all of that. And at the end of our summer, to come back to you so that you could actually see firsthand a number of the various programs that the Raleigh Police Department is engaged in with regards to our youth. And I'll just start with all of our programs are free, so it really affords a young person an opportunity to participate and engage in a number of activities in addition to really getting to know the officers and staff that work throughout our community. This is the side that you don't see at 6 o'clock on TV. This is the side that often you all ask, what do you do? So it gives me great pleasure to be able to come to you to share that. With much of an emphasis, back to the other one, with much of an emphasis on mentoring and promoting positive character development and educational reinforcement. Our Youth and Family Services Unit actually manages a number of our youth programs, not just during the summer, but throughout the year. And they cover ages 10 to 20. And this presentation today is actually only going to capture some of them, not all of them, because there are really too many to come before you. But these are some of our bigger programs that really do reach across the greater community to touch and be a part of youth development. Just to highlight a few, I'll start with the RBI Mentoring Baseball League. We started with 5 teams, and we are now at 10 teams. The Baseball League is actually a part of RBI Mentorship, and that is reviving baseball in inner cities. So this is a Major League Baseball youth outreach program, and this summer was our 10th year being a part of that. And as I said, we started with 5 teams, and we ended this year with 10 teams. So it's grown over those 10 years. The volunteers who play a part in that, as the season starts in May, it ends in August. We have officers, we've got civilian staff, parents, and community leaders that provide roles as either coaches, parent coaches, as well as umpires who are there and really just a part of making sure that the program is well run. We are very grateful for the partnership that we have with Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources because it is really significant in this regard as we're playing on many of the community fields, but it has really been an opportunity to really see the engagement of personnel as well as the greater community who come out just to see the kids play and to their surprise, this is the thing that they don't imagine. These are the partnerships and the relationships that they don't imagine where cops are working closely with kids. Another program or 2 programs I actually want to highlight are the girls basketball camp as well as the soccer camp. We've got officers who have played in many capacities and then they decide to be police officers, where some have actually played on a professional level in a number of sports. So they are pivotal in terms of being mentors and coaches and really showing kids the skill set that affords them to go into mainly a school environment Some is AAU, where they have actually gone now and played the sport. And what we really do look for are those young folk who have very little skill level, a very low skill level, who are new to those sports, so that they can understand and learn the fundamental basic skills of the sport. And many now have gone forward, and they play in community leagues, and they play for their schools, middle school and high school, and some have played in college as a result of them starting with a police coach or a parent coach in the community partnering with the police department. These next two programs I actually speak to at the same time because they actually mirror each other. Girls Inspiring Real Leadership and Sisterhood is our girls' camp. This program was in its 10th year this year as well, and you may recall we had a program that was called Charm School. This is the same program. We changed the title, and we allowed the girls to participate in 2017 in changing that title to what they believed future campers would be interested in being a part of. So out of that came Girls Camp. This partners with the Leaders of Tomorrow, which is a boys' camp, focused on really the very same principles. And a lot of what you see in both of these camps is we really are reaching young folk in some instances on the most basic levels of life. And we really are teaching them the life skills and being a part of their development in life skills that we anticipate and we know because we're already seeing the fruits of that labor show. We've got kids who have graduated college. We have kids, I say young, they're no longer kids. They started out as kids. They're now young men and women who have started businesses. And they've actually come back when we had our anniversary for our girls' camp this year. Several of them came back as keynote and speakers at that banquet to share with the other young women in the room what their experience has been like and the impact that our programs have made on them and their future endeavors. What comes of these two programs, the Girls Camp and Leaders of Tomorrow, is that it's focused on the development of self-esteem, proper communication skills, anger management, forgiveness, and life skills. But then they participate and they're taught the importance of time management, nutrition and stress management. And we take educational and college field trips. And then there are other programs where we've partnered with other businesses and corporations throughout the community, the city, and the county, and they have the opportunity to participate in STEM activities, as well as engage with other community leaders and other civic leaders who come before these young people and speak to what they do and offer those motivational opportunities for further engagement. Both of these programs result in a graduation and a certificate. Take a Kid Fishing Day is actually a national event, and we have often heard the phrase, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. This is a national program where we have participated in for a number of years now, and basically, we take them one day this year we took them to Emerald Isle. They learned how to fish for the first time. They travel on a chartered bus, and they eventually go out on a chartered boat as well. Everything is provided through a grant opportunity. And this year we had 32 kids who participated. What we take for granted, and this is where officers do get to see those things that many in the community don't see, because we are the ones who are responding to the 911 call when the crisis happens. So we are seeing the broken families more often than most in our community do. A lot of these kids are often referred to us by way of others in the community, other entities in the community who see an opportunity for a young person to thrive. They're also referred sometimes by some of the social services and other departments throughout the county by way of other partnerships that we have with staff with the various entities. What we take for granted is the fact that we live 2 hours from the ocean. And so the joy that you see on these young folks' face is priceless. And you don't know where they get the biggest joy, seeing the ocean for the first time or catching the fish for the first time. But the impact is unforgettable. In a time where policing and relationships do matter, and they always have with me as a Raleigh police officer, what we also do is we reach out to our young people for an opportunity to learn a little more about what the experience is as a Raleigh police officer. We do that through 2 programs. One is the Junior Police Academy, and that's with boys and girls ages 13 to 15. And basically, that's pretty much a week long, so it really gives them an opportunity to have just a snippet of a police academy experience. So they meet and greet command staff. They are in and out of our academy environment. They actually participate in physical exercise. So they get to see the overall experience in that 1 week period of time, while really offering a mentoring opportunity for them as well, and getting them to see that if this is indeed a career opportunity or a thought for them, here's how you begin to walk down that path, and recognizing that there are relationships in all of these programs, but more specifically this one as well, because they build a relationship where they know that they can reach out to that officer or that mentor well after these camps are over. The other program is the Explorer Post 911. This is a program that is actually nationally spun out of Boy Scouts or Scouts of America now. And so we have had this program for a number of years, and the ages are 14 to 20. So these kids will often graduate, and then we are still working with them while they enter college or in the workplace. But it really does afford them a more in-depth experience of policing, and then there's a national competition where they go off to Tennessee every year. I think it's Tennessee. And they participate in competition and various levels of competition with kids from across the country who are members of Explorer Post. And very often our kids are brought home, if not first place in a number of these competitions. They've come back with second or third. So as I segue into the next presentation, I do want to take a moment to show you a video that really captures very briefly our summer programs and all who are involved in making that difference.
My question I have for you, how many of you don't like the police? You be honest, you're not hurt my feelings. Good job. You gotta love yourself, right? You gotta appreciate who you are in all of your unique traits and characteristics and qualities.
The first thing we need to do, click on the upper swipe so your screen is not blank.
That's still locked. That is how we train to use that.
Because as a law enforcement officer, oftentimes we don't get to see the happy stuff. We're going in moments of crisis, and it's a bad day for someone. But this is quite the opposite. We're actually able to teach youth something positively, and then also we get to bring smiles.
Girls Camp stands for Girls Inspiring Real Leadership and Sisterhood. This started in 2009, all right, 10 years ago.
And you kept showing us what a strong woman is like. To keep pushing, you are the leader that we all needed. So I want to thank you once again for helping us get to the women we need to be.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Down to your right. 1.
Your hands go over the ball, go slide your feet.
It's just about about taking some kids who never get a chance to do this or experience what it is to be outside the bounds of the city of Raleigh, the inner city of Raleigh, try something completely different.
We're going to speed up and go for a nice long ride, okay?
It's a heartwarming experience, you know, for us, the chaperones, you know, and for them, it's just, it's like a wow moment. You know, you see it in their faces when they catch their first fish.
Outstanding! Congratulations! Smile, let them get that. That is a beautiful, beautiful.
Squad, are you ready? Yes, sir! 10 jumping jacks on my count. Ready? Begin! 1, 2, I can't hear you! 4, 5.
So like, imagine this, like, if I didn't see around the corner, I could just do that. Who did? Oh, in general, all over the country, it's kind of...
So the first thing I need everybody to do, go up and click start a new project. So after you have that, hit run.
Should it be there?
If we're trying to follow the mouse, what do we need to do? If we need to follow the other characters, what is it that we need?
It's 4 laps. We run as a group. Are you guys ready?
So where are you pointing?
Ball forward, one more. I want you to come all the way through.
Three's gonna win.
This fight is going to go to somebody who's had a great attitude all week.
He respected what was going on. He bought in.
Never complains.
When we asked both of them to lead, they did it with Bob Cross. Role model to all the other campers.
And every time I went to her front door, she had a smile.
So Zion, got yourself a new fight.
Excellent.
What I didn't say in a number of those programs, particularly the Girls Camp and the Leaders of Tomorrow, what we also emphasize, in addition to a lot of the things that they get in return, is there's a service project with a number of our programs that really give the young folk an opportunity to understand the importance of giving back to the community for a greater cause, bigger than we are. The folders that I am sharing with you now is the next topic. For a number of years, we have actually been working on planning a youth summit. So September the 28th of this year, we will host our first inaugural youth summit at the McKimmon Center. This is a free day-long event that is focused on really connecting our youth between the ages of 13 to 18 who live in Wake County and connecting with us. The idea there is to really create a collaborative, a youth-inspired partnership with the youth and the greater community as a means by which we can encourage, educate, and empower our youth. This particular event actually has a hashtag, We Hear Youth, and youth, as you can see, is spelled that way, where the YOU is capitalized, to really place emphasis on young people for that day. The whole purpose also speaks to a meaningful engagement as a way of connecting their present with our shared future. The idea also with this program is to make sure that they have a voice beyond this particular event, and working very closely with them. We've established basically an advisory board so that it didn't look like a bunch of adults were planning a program for young folk. We've got a variety of ages who have really sort of kept us focused on things that are of specific interest and of concern for today's youth. And so this is going to be, if you will envision for a moment, any conference that any of us as adults have gone to. It starts at 9:30 in the morning and it goes until basically 6 o'clock for them. The last 2 hours of the day are actually a day dance in celebration of them for staying with us for the course of that day. But it really is trying to focus and give them an opportunity that they may not have otherwise had an opportunity to be a part of ever. So we're looking at features such as interactive workshops. And in these workshops, we're going to have motivational speakers. Some, as we get to this slide, there'll probably be a few faces that you recognize right off. But it really does afford them the opportunity to ask questions. And some will actually participate in panels and some of the panel discussion as well. But the whole point is that it's engaging. The discussions, the topics were, there was a laundry list of topics that the young folk came to us and offered as possibilities. And so I think that it's a very wide and a very a wide variety of topics. The speakers are from our community right here in Raleigh, and some are nationally known. And so we're bringing folk in to really share information and opportunities of inspiration and motivation with our folk. The career path, if you can imagine, most of the time we go to a career fair. We know that most of these folk will not necessarily some won't be ready to start a job just yet. However, the career path fair affords them to meet and engage with professionals from various career fields. And so they have an opportunity to identify a number of things. One is, if I'm interested in being the city manager or someone else in that professional setting, what path did you take to be in that position? What should I be doing as a young person if I'm thinking about doing something like this? The other opportunity is it identifies those organizations and businesses that will be available for internships as well as job shadowing. And we know that here in Wake County, most kids need some type of service hours for graduation. So it affords them an understanding of what that is as well. There's an app that will be available for them so that beyond the 28th, they'll be able to go to this app and identify who's offering community hours, who's offering a shadowing opportunity, and so forth. The meals, the giveaways, all of this is a part of their full day. The presenters, this is just one slide with some of the presenters, and there again, I think most know Gab Smith from CAM. I've seen her present to young people, and it's just an awesome presentation. So the energy, without a doubt, is going to fill that day, as will others. The keynote is the young man to the left of the screen. He is Sean T. Blanchard. He's the author of How About That for a Crack Baby? Keys to Mentorship and Success. So he's going to speak about staying focused while leveraging obstacles and taking advantage of present-day opportunities. He comes with nothing but a laundry list of accolades and the offerings that he has for young people who might not see potential and opportunity in front of them, and he is a perfect example of that. Other presenters will speak on topics like applying sports lessons to life lessons, breaking barriers, the impact of hip-hop on pop culture, and redefining manhood, and more. The young lady in the top left, Lindsay, I've had the opportunity to be on a panel with her. She's actually an NC State student who took it upon herself to become an entrepreneur. She now has a business out at the State Farmers Market, where she hires individuals. It's 1-2-3 Coffee, and she hires individuals with intellectual disabilities. And so she is just a young entrepreneur who has such a message for young folk on both sides of that, as an employer, but also just as a young person with a dream and a goal. So as part of us building this initiative from ground up, we have not only identified our mission, as I mentioned earlier, but planning for this has really allowed us to see opportunities to further develop and be involved with our youth. These goals, really, we just really want to encourage and empower our young people beyond the 28th, and the following that we're already seeing is huge for us, and so we're really excited about this. And in keeping with our commitment to the strategic plan, this event serves to model the importance of investing in our youth to ensure that our future reflects a safe, vibrant, and a healthy community. And I also want to say that, as I've already mentioned, that the Youth Advisory Committee in this, these have been some active young folk, and they have led a bunch of adults in this. So we are really excited about the 28th finally coming and being here. And I do want to say publicly, I want to thank Marshall Adams David, who has been sitting right beside me throughout most of the planning for this, as well as you, the council, who has supported this endeavor. And really, we're just excited about making it happen. It's been a long time coming, as well as the various other departments. And there have been a number of departments that have been a part of this. Housing and Neighborhoods, our IT, Parks and Rec, and others. And every department that has engaged with young people, I dare say we've tapped them on the shoulder in some capacity to make this happen. So in closing, the 28th is our launch date for this, with hopes that it is such a success that it becomes an annual event. Are there any questions?
Good work.
Thank you. Great work. One question, has the deadline passed for registration, or is it on-site registration?
It is. If you go, you don't have the back of it, do you? You have a card in your folder?
Yep.
The QR code?
Yeah.
If you click onto that, it goes to the city website, and young folk can register.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and I did, was reading through your packet and noticed that you're still missing some gold sponsors. So I'd like to make a motion that we take $10,000 from our council contingency and become a gold sponsor for the Youth Summit.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Aye. Thank you.
I just wanted to get my opportunity to endorse all the programs you're doing here with the summer camps and the youth summit here. It's just great that you're creating these kinds of, and Marshall over there too, creating these kinds of opportunities for kids who might not otherwise have those kind of opportunities for the sports and the social skills, the educational skills, the career skills. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I left one thing out. And I talked about the youth being part of the advisory group, but there is a contingency of RPD staff that has worked tirelessly to put this together. So it's so interesting to see the talent that comes out of necessity. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Andrew?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The second item is a presentation on our capital area Greenway Master Plan update. We will ask for your approval of the contract award and budget transfer. Before you do that, we'd like to present to you what we're about to do next. Obviously, greenways in the city of Raleigh are something that are incredibly important and a very high priority. And so this is a master plan that is in need of some update, and we're ready to proceed. So with that, staff from Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources is here to make the presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm going to start with providing a little bit of history on the Greenway Master Plan. The first Greenway Master Plan was adopted in 1976, and it was followed by 2 additional updates in 1986 and 1989. And each time there was an update to the plan system grew. So the first master plan included 77 miles of trails, but by the 1989 update, that had increased to 270 miles. Now, the 1989 update is the most recent update that we've had to the Greenway Master Plan. And as you all know, the city has changed quite a bit since then. The population has grown by almost 250,000 people, but the land area has also increased by almost 55 square miles. So given the time since the last update and the changes that we've had, we have a lot of goals to accomplish with this update. First and foremost is to make sure that the Greenway Master Plan is consistent with the city's strategic plan and any other policies and plans that have been adopted in the last 30 years. We are going to review and evaluate current city policies and make recommendations based on best practices. We're going to review the existing trail classifications, looking at the recommended widths for the Greenway corridors to make sure those are adequate. We're going to look at doing a very high-level ADA analysis of the Greenway system. We're going to be looking at existing system gaps, and we're going to develop an urban trail concept for planning purposes. Historically, the Greenway system has been used primarily for recreation, and our cross-sections run along stream corridors, but as there's more of a reliance on the Greenway system for transportation, we do need an urban trail concept that can be applied to our connector trails and on other locations to help better use the system for transportation. The plan is going to provide a list of prioritized trail improvements and then preliminary cost estimates for those highest priority projects. Public outreach and participation is going to be really important for this update, starting with the fact that the plan will be guided by a steering committee of approximately 15 members representing diverse groups, and the next slide after will provide a little bit more detail on that. We're planning on having public meetings, 3 sets, 3 different locations across the city, a interactive project website with an online survey. We plan on providing information at multiple public community events around the city. And this is a list of the interests that we're looking at targeting for the steering committee. And you can see it includes a vast array of interests from bicycle advocates to public safety to environmental interests. And I will be coming back to you at a later city council date with the recommended list of steering committee members, and I'll ask if you have anyone specifically as an individual or organization that you would like to be included on that you could just let me know between now and that next meeting, and we'll make sure to include those. Just some background on the RFQ process that was put forward. First, the project is funded by annual CIP funds. We presented the project scope and received approval from the Transit and Transportation Core Team for the strategic plan, Parks, Recreation, and Greenway Advisory Board, and the Greenway and Urban Trees Committee. The RFQ was advertised in March of this year. We received 4 responses. They were reviewed by multiple city departments, and ultimately Tool Design was the recommended firm to move forward with. As far as a project timeline goes, if we're able to issue a notice to proceed next month, we're hoping to wrap up the entire planning process by late next summer. And then this goes to our recommendation to authorize the city manager for us to execute a contract with Tool Design in an amount not to exceed $249,800. Authorize staff to develop a list of steering committee members and come back to you with that list at a later meeting. And then also authorize a budget transfer of $100,000 from the ADA facility upgrades to Parks Plan updates so that we can address those ADA analysis needs of the Greenway Master Plan. So with that, I will open it up to questions.
I've got a question. The steering committee that you're going to recommend, who serves on that, can you tell me a little bit more about that process?
Sure. Well, we definitely want it to be, at least thus far, not specific individuals, but individuals that represent organizations. So we would want the CACs represented, Parks and Greenway Advisory Board, other organizations that have an interest in transportation or recreation, so maybe NCDOT, Wake County Public Schools, RPD, the North Carolina Museum of Art. So we really just want to target those interests that I showed a list for.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Any other?
I just have one question. The 100,000, is that part of the 249 or is that separate?
That is part of the 249.
Okay. I just move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mayor and Council, 2 additional items for your consideration, both just information. The first is, wanted to ask Derek Raymer from our Office of Emergency Management and Special Events to do a very brief update on Hurricane Dorian. We certainly have been monitoring the situation well over the weekend and are well connected, as we always are, to emergency management systems and structures. At this point, we think we're going to be fine, but obviously you never know, and so it's up to us to be well prepared. We also are paying very close attention to what some of the other impacts may be in other communities, and again, how we may either be able to help or be prepared for those potential impacts. So with that, I'll ask Derek Raymer to give you just a few slide update.
Yeah, this will be brief. Just wanted to kind of give you a brief update on our preparation efforts and what we expect here from Hurricane Dorian. I'm not going to focus too much on the weather, but this is the general track as of early this morning. It hasn't changed much over the past 48 hours as far as impacts to us. So that's a good thing. That gives us good confidence that it's not going to do anything crazy or wonky. When you look at the expected rainfall totals, really not much in the way of rain, maybe upwards of 4 inches. I would think that this would be more like one of those downburst events we've kind of seen through the spring and the summer, some real heavy intense rain coming in bands, but overall not a lot of heavy rainfall. You'll hear on the news the storm's just not moving. It's not moving where it is now. Once it starts headed north, it should come and go fairly quickly, so we don't expect any stalling and really prolonged periods of rain like you saw in Florence. The arrival time of tropical storm winds, this is really our biggest concern here, and as you can look on this, it's a little busy. But around Thursday morning and through the day and into the evening, Thursday night is when we'll see tropical storm force wind gusts here, which are over 39 miles an hour, almost up to 55, 56 miles an hour. So we won't really have sustained winds at that level. It'll be breezy throughout the day, but there's some potential for some pretty gusty winds coming through throughout the entire day, which leads to down power lines, down trees, that type of stuff. So that's really our biggest impacts as we look towards it. Our Emergency Operations Center will be prepared to open to oversee all efforts. This is always a great time for us to get together to go through these plans. It's really important to understand that when we open the EOC, there's really not staff dedicated to that from any one place in the organization. It's every department. And they put aside their day jobs and they come together to really manage these incidents as one unit. And that's really important and something really that we work hard on in the city. Obviously, our coordination with external stakeholders, Duke Energy, Wake County is critical to this. We're in constant contact with them. Duke deals with the power, we deal with the trees. They go hand in hand, so we've really got to make sure we've got a great partnership there. Just an item of note, just about 2 weeks ago, we finished some great training on debris management here in the city. Our pre-position contract holders who come in and help us with cleaning up debris came in, so everybody's kind of on the same page with that. So really great timing as we lead into hurricane season. And then we've got some great new flood cameras out there at those frequent flooded locations where we're able to keep an eye on things, some warning systems in place that give us really good information as far as when the water is going to overtop those flooded areas. And again, what we expect from this is not a lot of rain, but still some of those low-lying areas, that flash flooding can really occur on those urban right-of-ways. Safety, again, these are just general messages we've got to make sure we remind people of. Again, that flood-prone area, get to higher ground. People know where they live and if they're in those areas, and so we always advise them to get out while they can. Don't drive through those flood waters. It goes back to what we said with those new cameras and new warning systems we're trying to install. The rain and the flooding really kills more people in hurricanes than the wind does, and so we always want to remind people of that. stay away from the down power lines. And the most important thing, and this is what I try to remind people all the time, take care of yourself. There's lots of information out there. You can read about safety kits and water and food and all that. Take care of yourself, and then make sure you take care of your neighbors. Really, the communities that survive best in hurricanes and other catastrophes are the ones that have a strong neighborhood where they look out for each other. So I always remind people to look out for yourselves, but then also look out for your neighbors. Finally, public information. Only follow those trusted sources of information. Our city's website will update, our social media pages will update with some information as far as what we're doing here in the city. I always like to try to direct people to readync.gov. That's where you can find a lot of that detailed information on safety kits and information at the state level, making your emergency plans and that type of stuff. So if you get questions, please try to highlight people to go to this website. There's a lot of really great information out there. So with that, I will take any questions you might have.
I have one. I know our yard waste facility on New Hope Church Road, they've been working on it, and will it be prepared to handle any private yard waste? Because I know we have a management company to handle city right-of-way and things, but if there's any damage and wind damage, residents, will they still be able to take items there?
Yeah, so as of right now, the plan as of this morning, and there's some ongoing meetings with this to make sure that we're able to adjust depending on if it's small amounts or larger amounts. Everything will kind of stay the same as of right now. Your regular yard waste service will continue through the weekend. We'll be able to evaluate how much debris we have on the ground, and then if we decide to make any adjustments to that, we'll certainly communicate that out. But everything should operate as normal at least through the end of the week.
Okay.
Thank you. You
problem.
make me sleep easier at night. One note I just want to throw out there as this will be the first hurricane, there may be others this year, but one of the things I noticed last year was that we didn't do a great job getting Spanish language information out there. I know websites are a different beast, but on our social media, so can we just kind of keep that in mind as we start putting out really helpful information to the community to have
absolutely.
a Spanish
No problem.
language version? Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very
All
much.
right, great, thank you.
Thank you. Last item is just a matter of personal privilege. The city of Raleigh lost a good friend this past week in the fire department. So Assistant Fire Chief Keith Tessinaire lost a battle with cancer, and he's been a good friend as well as a really good person. And he helped a lot of folks in the city of Raleigh Fire Department as well as the city overall for many years. So we just wanted to make a comment of recognition for him and the Raleigh Fire Department today. Our thoughts go out to his wife Jessica and his daughter Hannah. We're going to miss him, and so we just wanted to make that comment. He's provided a lot of really wonderful service to the city for quite a long time. So just a matter of a personal comment. Our thoughts go to the family this time. So with that, Mayor and Council, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, next we're going to move on to report and recommendation of the Raleigh Citizens Advisory Council.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Christina Jones, and I am the newly elected chairperson of the Raleigh Citizens Advisory Council. I am replacing Shelley Winters, who was appointed to the Planning Commission. This happened in July, so it was kind of a surprise. I just wanted to come and take this time to introduce myself. I have met many of you before, so I am glad to see some familiar faces. So I don't really have a full report because we were off in August, and so I'm going to give you just an update of what I've been working on and what we'll bring to you the next time. In this month that I have taken over, what I have seen that was lacking was pretty much a budget that, not that we don't have the money, because you guys graciously give us money to talk to our citizens and to do outreach, is that we weren't really accounting for it. Like, I didn't know where this money was going. So right now what we're going to instate in this next meeting is keeping track of not only our CAC $1,000 budget, but also our RCAC budget, which includes events like our October Recognition Award ceremony, our holiday festival, our retreat. And so I try to put that in. We have dwindled that, not dwindled, that's a horrible word, but we've gone from our 15,000, so right now we're sitting at about 1,800 after we account for all of that. So I definitely wanted to let you guys know that we are using the money that you have graciously provided us to outreach to our community, and we'll continue to track that between all of the CACs to ensure that we are doing our job and what we are here to do. The questions that I do have moving forward, I have been part, it was Shelley Winter's second vice chair for the last year, so I do know that she had a question. She'd come before you guys last December, and just some questions about governance and how we tell the CAC. We did go, I'm jumping over the place, but we did make new bylaws and adjust our bylaws last year, and then she came before you and we were given the governance of the CACs, and that's been kind of difficult for us to translate to our CACs because they're not really understanding. So I'm just wondering how we move forward, if we can get that statement that Shelley had requested so that I can better explain what we are as an organization, since we are a bunch of volunteers that definitely want to get this out. All of the information that I see here, those events that the chief spoke about, I was ignorant of that, and I'm sorry, that's my fault, but I want to use that, and I want to use CACs to be able to push that out, and how we best communicate amongst each other, so that I can do that, and I can do my job towards citizens of Raleigh. So that would be my first ask, is just that statement that we started discussing last December. And then the second ask, in regards to increasing communication between our CAC and city staff, otherwise city council, is to instate a meeting. I know we tried to do it back in January, speaking to a few city staff members, so that we know what's coming on the docket for you guys, and you guys know what's coming on the docket for us. And it kind of fell by the wayside, so I'd like to reinstate that on a quarterly basis so that that communication flow is continuing to go on. And then the last thing that I would like to ask for, we did bring up in, I think it was the work session back in June or July, which is help from the communications department. They did start putting our meetings on RTN. I have seen it, so I'm really, really appreciative for that. But how, if the next step can be, how do we teach Raleigh about what we do, and about those meetings so that we can get higher participation? I was looking at some of those zonings, and as you saw in North Central, we had a 10-5 vote, so it was 15 people there. And that's roughly the average for all of our CAC meetings. And our goal, my huge goal, is to increase that, and just looking for more advice from you guys on how we do that, and trying to give some ideas and take your feedback to our body of 18 CAC chairs so that we can continue that conversation. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. One is, the CAC as a body, is this a motion from the CAC? From the RCAC?
This was, from my understanding, and again, I am new to it, so please correct me if I'm wrong. From my understanding, this was last December that it was voted on in council that we are now the governing body. The RCAC is the governing body of all CACs, and that's what I'm just looking for clarification on.
Last December, you brought your bylaws to us and the CAC bylaws, and we voted on those. So that's your governing document. Not us. Those bylaws are your governing document.
So that is the clarification that I'm looking, because what has been explained, and whether that was wrong or not, was that what happened last December was that this RCAC is now the governing body over the CACs.
Whatever your bylaws say is how you act according. I mean, you set your bylaws.
Cheering section over there.
That's how you act. That's lays out how you act.
So I just need a little clarification.
Sure.
So are you saying what we voted on does not give you, in your opinion, or the RCAC opinion on the guidance that you need to share with the CACs to make them understand that?
Right. As it stands right now, I'm sorry for interrupting. As it stands right now, some CACs don't believe they need to follow it. So they're choosing not to and going by their own bylaws, which was the way it was prior to us updating those bylaws last year. So maybe the confusion on our end when there was a vote on it, of what that meant, and how I can better communicate that these are the bylaws moving forward for the entire CAC, and maybe get your assistance in making sure that that is communicated properly.
I'll jump in.
That would be your decision and your discussion.
Mayor, can I just ask a question of the city attorney? In terms of what was discussed prior, was the language clear enough to identify that there's now a working body that works with the CACs to better collaborate on all the messaging and all the other things that they want to accomplish? Because it seems like there's a disconnect here, and I don't know where it is.
Well, here's what happened in December. The RCAC bylaws were approved in 2012. And then in December, you were presented with bylaws that would apply to the individual CACs that the RCAC brought to you. We didn't have any input. I think at that time I said I hadn't read them. If you wanted me to, I could, but you voted without any kind of sort of input. So I think what you did is you adopted basically what was brought to you. So to date, the council has allowed them to write their bylaws. We've signed off on them, or you've signed off on them. So that's what the governing documents are now. There hasn't been any more specific direction from the council other than to check their bylaws. Now, do those documents contain everything everybody wants in them? I don't know. But if they don't, then the way to fix it would be to change the bylaws, add to the bylaws, bring them back and do that. But what we've done now is just, or what you've done is to approve what they've brought to you.
So may I make a request to the council, since there seems to be some ambiguity here, maybe ask our city attorney's office to look at the bylaws that exist and then look at the ones we just approved, make sure that we're given the right direction, and then have the city attorney's office bring it back to us?
Go ahead.
I mean, we can look at the bylaws, but the bigger question, I think, is from someone to say, you know, what the objective is. What's the end game for those bylaws?
May I jump in here with a suggestion?
Yeah.
The city provides resources, so we provide meeting space, we provide personnel, we provide budget to each of the individual CACs. Maybe this could be resolved as simple as us sending a letter saying that we have an expectation that for the CACs to receive these resources, that they will agree to abide by the bylaws established by the RCAC.
That sounds reasonable to me.
That's what I thought that's what I thought the intent was that we did back in December, but
maybe sending a letter clearly stating that will resolve any ambiguity or misunderstanding.
Could we ask the city attorney to send that letter, or?
To draft that letter?
How about that we sort of look at these questions and
Let 'em
come
look
back
at it.
and sort of answer them one by one as to, you know, maybe what the issues are and what the potential ways are to resolve them. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying right now as it stands that it's the city council's position, if it is, that, you know, you're governed by the bylaws that we have adopted. And if you're not happy with those, you know, perhaps there's some changes to them, but right now that's what's in place for you.
And I think, I'm sorry to jump in, I have experience in the last year just that has been the confusion among the CACs because they're not all present here, so they don't really know why their specific bylaws are changing, and that's what we need assistance with, to be able to tell them this is now our governing body. And then in September, actually in a few weeks, where we have a forum for them to amend, for they can come and say, hey, I don't like that bylaw. And we have September to use as amending the bylaws. So we have continued, we didn't just stop functioning, but this would just give us further assistance in that.
I think
so Christina, how do you view what your role of your group does compared to the other CACs?
In regards, you're saying RCAC as opposed to the other CACs?
What's your group, the function of, the purpose of your group? What is the purpose or the function?
So the way that I see RCAC, I've been part of the CAC since 2016, and the way I thought and how I would like to move forward is that we are that funnel that takes all of these beautiful ideas from city council meetings, from different organizations, and tells all of our CACs about that, so that we can hold them accountable to say, hey, I'll use Officer Jack Brown's awesome presentation prior to this to say, I would like everyone in the city to discuss this at their next meeting. That's what I see our CAC as in addition to what North Central and what Northwest CAC wants to do. We have that
So y'all send folks out and monitor the other CAC meetings then to make sure they're doing that? Is that
We've
the
just
plan?
started that. I have been to a few.
Would that be part of your plan?
Right. Yes, and I have started to. Now there are 18, and there's just 3 of us, or there was 3 of us, and so that was not part of the process before, but we are beginning to instill that so that we are acting as a governing body and have the words and the experiences to see at the different CACs. So yes, that is beginning.
So what happens then if you come back and say they don't want to do it? Then what happens? Then if they don't want to abide by your bylaws, you say you have 3 groups out there now that aren't doing it anyway?
A few, yeah.
So then what's the recourse for that?
Right now, we have the RCAC bylaws, so there's 2 different ones. What we voted on last December or November was for the CAC bylaws, and then what we're in the process of is instating that and what we're going to do. We have not approved those yet, whether that is losing funds or, we haven't approved those consequences for not following yet, because those currently do not exist.
Well, rather than maybe jumping right to consequences, maybe the goal should be that if you have some CACs that don't want to abide by the bylaws, that you first have a discussion and see how the bylaws can be amended so that there is agreement. Try to come to compromise first before.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that was it. I was just trying to answer that one question of what we're thinking of right now. We have 2 CACs that have just, I'm so sorry, Elizabeth. We have 2 CACs that have lost their chairs, so that is meetings that are going to be beginning next week so that we can establish some ground rules and some governance for those CACs who have lost it. But in that, yes, I see that we can do meetings prior to that, for sure.
But I think rather than you, a body, our CAC as a body saying to an individual CAC, you're going to lose your funding, I think probably the better approach is that you come to council, because it's really council's decision about funding.
No, I definitely understand. I was just I'm sorry. That's just something that we had discussed. That is not something that's actually being discussed as a part of the bylaws. I'm just using those as examples. So I'm sorry I used the wrong words for that. I apologize.
And also for clarification, and for those that are listening, the RCAC consists of the chairs of every CAC, correct?
Leadership.
It
could be
right. Or whoever their representative is.
Right, exactly. Yes.
So that's the part that I find baffling, is that each CAC is represented on the RCAC, and yet there's no understanding within the RCAC.
Well, I think to that point, since we are a body of volunteers, we don't really have a structure. There isn't one that when you walk in to becoming a chair of the RCAC or of a CAC that says, here are the rules. We don't have that currently, and we're trying to create that, and that's why I need your guidance now so that I can further create it, so that we don't have these problems. We're trying to make a structured organization out of one that was disorganized, as we are well aware.
Well, I mean, it sounds to me like you need to go back and look at the existing bylaws and figure out what's not working.
And
what
we
it is
are.
you need added, and then bring those back to us.
We are, and that's what this September meeting is for, so that those who disagree with some of the points of the bylaws are bringing forth their amendments, and we are going to vote on those this month. It's more so how do we move forward or how do we become a more structured organization? I know in the past we've looked at changing up the CACs, and we're trying to make us a valid group before we make that decision.
Okay, and I think going with Councilman Crowder's suggestion, if the city attorney can just look and see, and also making sure that what was approved is legal, since you haven't had a chance holistically.
Oh, I've read them.
Oh,
I mean, I
okay.
think it's legal. They're not. Again, there's not a lot of meat in the
Right.
bylaws. It's more like, what's a quorum and when do you meet and how do you vote and that kind of thing. As far as, larger questions, they're not a part of the bylaws.
Okay.
So if you wanted them to be, they'd need to be added. There's nothing illegal about them. I was just saying that I didn't review them before you voted on them and give you any impact. There's nothing illegal about them.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
So can we clarify what we've decided now, because I'm a little confused.
Well, I think they need to go back and look at their bylaws, figure out where the holes are, what the problems they're having are, and bring that language back to us. I mean, we don't define your organization. You define it in your bylaws and then bring it to us for approval.
Well, it seems to me, and maybe I'm misunderstanding this, but it seems to me like back in December, we said, yeah, the RCAC is the umbrella organization for all the CACs. And it sounds like some of the CACs don't believe that. And what you're asking for is some clarification that when we approved your bylaws, it did assert that the RCAC does govern all the subsidiary CACs. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly what we thought.
Okay, so do we have a mechanism for getting to that place?
And my suggestion was to send a letter stating exactly that, and maybe that would clarify it for everybody.
Well, if that's a motion, I'll second it.
I'll make that a motion.
I second that.
Okay, your original motion had withholding funds.
Well, I would say that maybe we can
Let's wait on that.
wait on that part and just do this part first and see what happens.
I think it would be helpful, at least if I've got my assignment, to know which things in the bylaws that there's issues with, and if they're actually bylaw issues or something outside of them, because these are pretty straightforward with, memberships and goals and nominations and that type of thing. So are there things in these bylaws which were, as I understand it, to be standard among the CACs? What are the issues and what are the problems between them?
Sure, and I can forward, what we have done is spent the last few months getting everyone to find the problems that they've had with it. So we have 3 CACs who are going to be speaking at our September meeting, and they've already sent those changes that they'd like. So if you would like, I can definitely send them to you so you see what the concerns are, if that would help.
Then we'll hold off on the motion until we get that information. Yep.
Sure. And then the other thing was just the meetings, if it was possible to, the only time I speak to you guys is if we do these quarterly updates. So I'm wondering, is it possible to meet with city staff on a quarterly basis so that I can get clarification on things instead of coming here every time and making this about fixing stuff? Is it possible to meet with staff? It is possible.
It's possible.
Is it probable? If it's not, then, I'm just asking a question.
No,
so not during hurricanes.
Yeah, I don't think we need guidance related to that. I think a more clear question is, is the council still comfortable with quarterly updates from the RCAC? Normally, your current protocol is boards and
Annually.
commissions come once a year. We're working off of general feedback that you said quarterly was fine for a council meeting, and that seems fine.
Yeah.
And so we're happy to meet with them on a quarterly basis if that's what they'd like to do.
That's fine. I guess I would like to hear, as they have their September meeting, though, to hear back from them.
Sure.
Because obviously there's an issue, and I would like to hear back until it's resolved.
So to follow up on that specifically, what council meeting would you think you would be ready to come back with your report on the work that you're doing in September, just to help us for scheduling purposes?
I can be back in October. That's fine. right after that meeting, we'll know what the CAC body voted on, because right now those 3 CACs that are coming before us, it gets voted on by the entire body. So if those are all approved, then the bylaws change.
So that's what I would propose, is that's a
Okay.
special item that you're specifically asking them for outside the context of the quarterly.
Okay. And if for some reason y'all don't work things out, we'll just, whenever you're available, come back.
Great. Yeah, and so I'll just speak with Sheila and
In case they're not ready
get
by
on
that
the
meeting.
docket.
We'll just bring it back when they're ready.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I appreciate your help. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, next we have a report and recommendation of the Raleigh Historic Development Commission.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Councilors. Tanya Tully here. And what is before you is just a routine matter, very first step into landmark designation applications. The Commission is just asking that you forward them to the State Historic Preservation Office, actually, the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, Office of Archives and History, for their legal review requirement, and also request that you schedule a joint public hearing with RHDC on the evening of November 6th.
Okay.
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to our committee meetings. Economic Development and Innovation Committee, we reported out the item of mobile retail. We did amend TC 5B18 by deleting the 4-hour-a-day limitation and changing the hours of operations from 6:30 to 11 p.m., setting the permit fee at $50. I know there had been a question about were legal services included, and they are. There is a copy of that amended proposal. If anyone has any questions, that's a motion.
Second.
I have some questions.
Mr. Cox?
I wanted some clarification about the hours of operation. It seemed to me they were 7:30 in the morning?
6:30.
6:30 in the morning and 11 o'clock at night?
Well, some of them are, you know, some of that is setting up the ability of being part of, you know, a neighborhood fair or whatever, but some of it is also the legal services and I think the banking services that go into areas that might have disasters and offer help. Actually, it's offering free help. But we did wrestle. It was till 2 in the morning. I'm not
Yeah,
really
it was.
sure. We cut it back to 11.
It was from 5 it was from
Well,
5 a.m. to 3
I mean, the thing
a.m.
that was going through my mind was typical retail operations like the malls, for example, or 9 till 9. And so I was more comfortable with 9 to 9. Particularly, these are not like our food trucks where we have designated parking spots for them. I mean, these can be pretty much.
They have to be on private property.
These are anywhere. So any
have to
any
be on
annex
private
property next to residential, for example, would qualify for this.
But we talked about that,
Yeah.
and there are buffer requirements.
So there are buffer requirements, and they cannot be in a residential area. I know some properties, storefronts are near residential, but we went back and forth that whole meeting on this. I think we spent almost as much time on this as all our other topics.
Well, I'd like to
Mayor-
make
Mayor, hold
an
on.
amendment
Hold on.
that we go with 9 till 9 for this initial program and see how it goes. And then,
Can I just ask one quick question? So Travis, if I am correct, our noise ordinance in the city is 7 to 11. Would I be right in that?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. The hours in the Chapter 12, excuse me, Chapter 12 code specify daytime and nighttime hours, and daytime hours are between 7 in the morning and 11 at night.
So no matter what happens here, whatever hours are decided on, I think we have to stay within what our noise ordinance is today.
well,
which is 7 to 11.
this isn't about noise. This is also about operation of a business. It's about traffic in an area, other considerations. And I think the typical standard is 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. for retail. And so my motion is to adopt this, but with the hours of operation from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Second.
So can Madam Mayor, you talked about neighborhood fairs.
Well, I'm just, you know.
I just wondered what that would
North
look
Hills.
like.
I'm just saying North Hills may decide that they're having on some days they have a market. And they may allow other retailers to come. I mean, it's all about private property owners that are already having retail, allowing mobile retail on their sites.
Well, I guess
They certainly can set up before 9 o'clock. It's just that they wouldn't be able to operate their business before 9 o'clock.
I mean, we talked about this originally. I know we looked at stopping it at, I think it was 10,
2 a.m. because they
2
wanted
a.m.
to be till,
and we moved it up to 11.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
I still think that in order to be neighborhood friendly, and also to be consistent with how most retail operations operate.
Well, Target closes at 10, and some are 24 hours.
Well, I think 9 to 9 is fine. This isn't a Target. I mean, this is potentially a trailer with an outdoor generator.
well, there are restrictions in there on the type of generator. It has to be a whisper generator. I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time, and we took it back into committee because the question was asked about, did it cover legal services? And the legal people that came to us had been offering free services for the hours and a lot of people needed to stop by before they went to work to get advice on legal services or after they got off work. So retail is not necessarily selling, stuff out of the back of a van. It covers a lot of things. We talked about bloodmobile drives. We talked about a lot of other things that are considered retail because that also includes services. And that was the reason for the extended hours, to be able to give people opportunities before and after work. They're not going to be parking in neighborhoods. They're going to be parking mostly in already available shopping centers.
Well, there's a motion and a second. So.
Could y'all repeat that? I'm sorry.
They want to change it to 9 to 9.
The motion is very simple, just to adopt the motion, to adopt the proposal, but change the hours from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Well,
So he was trying to amend the previous motion, right?
So may I just throw something out here? Since we've been working on it a long time and we don't know exactly, I mean, I've had banks reach out to me and the legal guys. Would it be advantageous for us, since we've lowered the permit fee to $50, would it be advantageous for us to just allow it in terms of what our noise ordinance is today? And if we find that we have trouble, come back and amend it to make the changes we need to make once it's out in the community and we get a verification of what it's going to look like?
So is that
Well-
suggested amendment?
Yeah, I'm just asking Mr. Cox.
So
what he considers that.
can I read something real quick? If you look at the backup material, item I, it states hours of operation are limited to the hours between 6:30 a.m. and 11 p.m. or the hours for a retail use in the zoning district, whichever is more restrictive. If the location of a lot accommodating the mobile retail vehicle is located within 150 feet of the property line of a single unit or two-unit dwelling, the hours of operation are limited to the hours between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m.
You're saying that if they're within 150 feet, it's from 7. All right, I'll change my amendment so that if they're located within 150
It's already
feet.
in there.
It's already in here.
It's already in here.
But I would change that to, if they're within 150 feet of residential property, that should be 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. If you're anywhere else, fine, they can operate starting at 6:30. But if you're within 150 feet of a residential area, then I would recommend that they operate from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Yeah, because otherwise
And
we're discriminating against people who live in apartment complexes or townhouses or condos. So I would second that amendment.
Well, I have to agree with Ms. Crowder that we look at going along with the already established noise ordinance that we have for the city for
7 to 11.
7 to 11, for good reason.
So, well, okay.
And in terms.
I'm going to can I take a turn here?
Sure.
So I do think that it is important, if you're going to protect one kind of residential use, i.e. single and duplex, you should protect all residential uses, because those folks have to sleep too. In terms of where these things will get located, chances are 99% will be located outside of 150 feet from a residential use. And so I think if we said if you want to locate closer than that to a residential use, we could be more restrictive, but leave it 7 to 11 for everywhere else in the city.
Or 6:30. I mean,
Or 6:30, okay.
That's fine.
Mr. Cox, I'm not going to go for the 6:30 just because I want to stay consistent.
Okay, then
All right,
7,
all right.
7,
All
7,
right,
7.
so I'm confused because it's already in the ordinance that you can't operate within 150 feet, right, of
I
residential.
thought Mr. Branch read that if you were within the 150 feet, then the hours of operation were from 7 to 11.
To 10.
To 10.
And it doesn't say residential, it says single unit or 2 units. So if we want to apply it to multifamily, we really need to change that to residential.
Okay, I just want y'all to remember, this is not, like I said, this is bloodmobiles and free legal services. There's a lot of other things that people need. It's not just
Right.
selling stuff.
Right.
So,
But we're just looking at a restriction that's close to residential.
okay, so it sounds like we are at, the hours of operation are 7 to 11, and if you're within 150 feet of residential, any type of residential, it's 9 to 9.
Yes. That would be the motion.
And I'll second that.
Okay, do I have any further discussion?
No.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Growth and natural resources.
Okay. Growth and natural resources. Can you get it up here? Sorry. Committee recommends removing these items that are listed from the agenda with no action taken. The issues are being addressed in the revision to the Stormwater Design Manual. The revisions will be presented to the Stormwater Management Advisory Commission for consideration and recommended to the full council when the revised manual is done. They are listed here. That's my motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And then just one more thing. Our next Growth and Natural Resources meeting will be held Wednesday, September 11th and the 25th in the council chambers, and will begin at 4. Please note also that in the October meeting, dates have been changed due to conflict scheduling. We will meet October 16th and October 30th and resume our regular schedule in November. Thank you.
Okay. Healthy neighborhoods.
Yeah, no report, but 2 items. One, the next Healthy Neighborhoods Committee meeting will be on Tuesday, September 24th, in the council chamber at 4 p.m. And the second item that may be of interest is that the 2019 North Carolina Affordable Housing Conference is going to take place on October 7th and 8th at the Raleigh Convention Center. It's a tremendous conference, and I'll be there, and I'm sure you can get up with council office staff to find out details.
Okay, great, thank you. Transportation.
Actually, I'm sorry, I left off one item. Actually, it's not, I was thinking we were in council concerns, we're doing committees.
Yep.
I'll hold that.
Okay.
Okay. So the Transit and Transportation Committee met, and we discussed 3 items at our September 27th we discussed 3 items at our August meeting that we're reporting out 2 of those. The first one is we're reporting back as our Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee work plan. In your agenda packet includes a revised BPAC work plan that was presented to the council at our August meeting. We recommend that the city approve with a small change bulleted in the advisory plan that identifies a strike through that we felt improved clarity. And that one was that instead of saying promote the implementation of a zero policy to improve safety for our roads, it will read promote a vision zero policy to improve safety for our road users. And that's the motion.
Second.
Okay.
And I would like to say before we call the vote to the committee, Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee, thank you so much for sitting down and having a real good conversation about how we can do a better work plan for you. So I really do appreciate it.
Okay, all in
Thank you.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
All right. The second item is the committee learned a great deal about TransDev accountability to the city. TransDev is our vendor for our Go Raleigh bus service. Our staff monitors performance and the limited role the city has in the day-to-day personnel matters were understood to us from TransDev. As a result, we recommend that the City Council be kept apprised as we begin the next selection process of our transit operator. As you saw in the agenda, at the appropriate time, we have asked staff, 1, to provide a report on the process and timeline to identify the next Go Raleigh transit operator. 2, ensure that the RFP includes provisions that will require potential partners to demonstrate that 1, customer service is paramount, and 2, personal practices monitor the city's values. And lastly, provide a briefing to the City Council prior to the release of the RFP to allow City Council feedback. So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
And our next meeting is September 24th in room 305 from 3 to 5.
Okay, so we'll go to reports, Mayor and Council. Mr. Cox?
I just want to thank staff for providing the report in the manager's update on secondary employment. I do have questions and concerns about our policies related to, in particular, our police officers being able to work at establishments that provide alcohol, or owning establishments that provide alcohol, particularly if they're located outside of Wake County or outside of Raleigh's jurisdiction. And I don't have anything in particular to offer at this point, except that I would like to continue and have further discussions about that in the future. So I'll work with the city manager about having some meetings going forward so that we can discuss that further.
Okay. Ms. Stewart?
Quickly on the notes coming out of the Transportation and Transit Committee meeting, it actually has me listed instead. I think it should be Councilmember Crowder. So I just want to flag that for clerk. Yes. I'll show you later.
Welcome to sit in anytime you like.
Yeah, switch you out. I do want to ask regarding childcare at public meetings. Per the new section we saw in the comp plan update shared with us today, we also saw a couple places where we're looking to get more engagement from the public on a few other issues earlier in the agenda. And in hindsight of comments received at the city's community conversations on gentrification, I'd like to ask staff for a report on possible options for providing childcare at our public meetings, with the intent being to allow more options for parents with young children to attend city meetings and events. Is that a possibility we could get a report back?
Oh, we certainly can. I think there's likely a resource implication to that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so I would interpret from that that you would be, you're asking, what potential resources or funding would be necessary for us to accommodate that.
Yeah, whatever y'all come back with in terms of possible options and how to best implement, I think would be great to see.
Right. There are instances where we have done that, but our limitation is less to do really with intent as it is resources.
Can I also add something to that? I had a great conversation with some of our officers this past weekend at the African American Cultural Festival, and out of that, a lot of times when they're working and doing overtime, sometimes they even have child care issues. So can I add our city staff to that request? So when they're working major events like First Night or some big event that we have for the city, that we can look at possibly ways to provide some child care services for those officers and any other city staff. If I can add this to that request.
You certainly may, and we can provide a report on that. The scope of that question is much larger.
I'm sure.
So I think that's up to the council. We can certainly include that. I think it would take us more
If you need a little more time for that,
we would
I'm
need more
okay
time
with
to
it.
respond to that.
Yeah.
Scoping and defining that will be interesting.
I almost
Okay.
see them as two. I appreciate the piggybacking.
Yeah, they can be
but I think
separate,
they're
but that's
two
fine.
different requests. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get a response back to both. They may not come together.
Yeah, 2 different requests, both about childcare.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I have one other thing. So September is an incredible time to be in our city with all the great events coming up, the Hopscotch, IBMA, SparkCon, and it's a great month to be in downtown. And I'm disappointed that we don't have a wonderful alternative mobility option to provide our residents and our guests. And so, Mr. Manager, I'm wondering if we could get an update in a soon coming report on where things are with the rollout of the Gotcha scooters.
Happy to provide that to you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Stevenson?
Yeah, I have one item. Tried to jump the gun there. So we just referred this change in parking minimums downtown to my committee, and I mentioned there's some, and it's something the mayor, you mentioned, a concern about these residential areas that are around the perimeter of downtown and how those parking impacts might affect them. So this is another item that relates to the Prince Hall District, and so we adopted it as a historic overlay district before we did the remap, but then we came in with the remap of downtown, and half of Prince Hall, roughly half, is zoned OX, and maybe a little bit more than half is zoned DX, and it just seems incongruous for us to be zoning a historic overlay district to allow the highest intensity uses possible in the city of Raleigh. So as we look at the parking boundaries, I'd also like to look at taking another look at whether it makes more sense to have DX zoning on top of our historic overlay district in Prince Hall, or whether something that is similar to the OX3 that other parts of Prince Hall are zoned.
Well, have you had requests from property owners for that? I mean,
No, it's a request from me. I just think that it's totally inconsistent to have a DX zoning on top of a historic African-American neighborhood.
Well, you might want to talk to the property owner.
Well, actually, I did,
Their property.
at the time that the remap happened, I took this to the Central CAC, and they unanimously endorsed changing it back. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was, because I was at that meeting.
Could we put it in GNR and
It's your committee. I mean,
get
that's
some
your
feedback?
district.
So I haven't had anyone complain about trying to downzone. Actually, I've had conversations about just removing the overlay. So
Removing the historic district?
Yeah, so I think let's have a conversation and really talk to some of the property owners in that area before we move forward with this.
So what forum do you have in mind?
We'll talk and figure that out, because I don't know here today, because you just brought this up as council concerns.
Right.
So I'm hearing it from you for the first time.
Okay, so that sometime before our next council meeting, so
That's
if
the-
we get
that's
a
the goal.
consensus, we can move forward. Okay, great,
That's
thank
the
you.
goal.
It's fine.
Okay.
Mr. Branch?
Couple items. Well, yeah, a couple items. First, Southeast Raleigh Elementary School had a great ribbon cutting before they opened back on August 22nd. I wish more of my peers, if you were there, but the Wake County School Board was there, the county commissioners were there, and this is a great project that ties into the Southeast Raleigh Y ribbon cutting, which is tomorrow from 11 until 12. So I hope some can participate in it and attend that. The Afro-American Cultural Festival celebrated 10 years this past weekend. It was a great turnout. We had a visit from one of Dorian's friends early yesterday, a big rain shower, but it went quickly. So they were able to finish the night and have a successful event. And speaking of hurricanes, if weather permits, because I know staff will be watching this, on Friday, the Chavis Park will have a groundbreaking from 3 to 5. This Friday, if anything changes, we will work judiciously to get all the information out. But as of right now, everything is still moving forward.
I think they're going to move it indoors if it rains.
Right.
Still have it. I don't really have anything. I wanted to ask a follow-up question to Mr. Cox about your question on the policy from the police department about officers owning another business. I mean, we don't set personnel policy within departments, so.
Well, I am curious, first of all, consistency. I know with some of the policies, we do allow officers to be employed with businesses if they're outside the Raleigh jurisdiction, but for some reason that doesn't apply to alcohol-related establishments. And I am a little
So you just want
concerned.
clarification on that?
Clarification, and I also want to express concern that, you know, it's no longer 1920s prohibition, and attitudes towards alcohol have changed and are changing, and I'm wondering if, even though we can't change policy, council can't change policy, we can certainly ask questions about it and maybe make suggestions about about the direction that those policies should go in the future.
Okay.
Me? Thank you. Recently, the Transportation and Transit Committee discussed the opportunity to designate a transit overlay district on New Bern Avenue corridor. The committee and later the City Council decided to defer action on the New Bern Avenue corridor until the equitable development around the transit study could be completed and the transit overlay district tool may have the opportunity to be refined. This week, the city will initiate the Western Boulevard corridor study, which will, in part, identify the best alignment for bus rapid transit along the corridor. I'd like to position the city to be ready to initiate the mapping process for a transit overlay on Western as soon as the alignment is identified. I would like to request that an item be sent to Transportation and Transit Committee to provide the timeline for Western corridor study, including significant milestones, most significantly the anticipated timeline and specific touch points regarding the recommended alignment. 2, provide an explanation of the possible next steps for referral to the Planning Commission to start the mapping process. This should identify any procedural actions that could precede the alignment designation to allow the most expeditious action to designate a transit overlay district once an alignment is identified. That's my motion.
So basically, the same thing we did for New Bern do for Western, is what
Yeah.
you're asking?
Yes. In terms, but there was a delay in,
Right, because we're waiting for the study.
so this is just to get us ready, so when that alignment is identified, we can move forward.
Okay.
If we want here's my concern, if we're looking for density along the transit corridors, and I think that's what we're talking about, then we have to be proactive to make sure that we're ready to dive into that when those alignments are identified.
All right, I'll second the motion.
That's fine, I mean,
Okay.
that's fine.
All
Thank
right,
you.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Mr. Thompson, was that all? I guess.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Thompson?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I would like to thank Chief Deck Brown and our police department for all their efforts with our youth programs that y'all are doing. You know, we have a neighboring city right now that's having epidemic gang warfare, and I have to believe that these type of programs that y'all are doing will reap very large benefit and dividends to keep young folks from getting involved in gangs and that type of activity. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just have a couple of things. I think everybody's well aware that we have an election coming up on October 8th. I think it would, we also know that turnout in those elections tends to be really low, less than 20%, and I think that's sad. So I'd like to see if people would agree to having us post on the city website a link to the Wake County Board of Elections website with information about voting, election day, early voting, that sort of thing. And I'd also like to see if we could arrange to provide free bus service on October 8th so that people can not have an excuse for not getting to the polls.
I'm looking at Robin, because there's constraints around what we can and can't do
I
with
think-
regards to an election, so I don't,
We've already opined that if it's just general election information and not taking any kind of position one way or another, that's fine.
okay.
And the bus service, I think you've done in the past.
Yes, we have.
And I think that's fairly common across the state.
I thought
I
we'd
mean,
done that, but.
We haven't, have we done that?
Did we already approve
Did it
that?
last year.
Let's verify. I think you already approved the bus service piece in the budget already.
Okay.
Okay.
But if not, we'll let you know, because clearly that seems to be
Okay.
of interest. So
Okay.
I believe you already took that action, but we'll double check.
Okay.
on
Okay,
that.
thank you.
So if there's no objection, we'll ask the website to post the link to the
Yes,
election,
and-
Board of Elections information.
And just to weigh in for clarity for the public, in effect, there's no resources really involved because we're putting that on our website with a link to help people get the information.
Okay.
So that was what we kind of came to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk, appointments?
Appearance Commission, 2 vacancies, no nominees. Arts Commission, 1 vacancy. Shelley Smith received 5 votes, so would be appointed. Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, you have 1 vacancy, no nominees. Civil Service Commission, 2 vacancies, no nominees. DHIC, 1 vacancy, no nominees. Historic Cemeteries Advisory Board has 3 vacancies. Drew McGill received 8 votes, so would be appointed. Historic Resources and Museums Advisory Board, you have 3 vacancies. Audrey Morgan received 8 votes, so would be appointed. Raleigh-Durham Airport Authority, we're still at 4-4. Raleigh Transit Authority, 2 vacancies, alternate members. Joseph Austin received 8 votes, so would be appointed, leaving 1 vacancy. Sister Cities, 3 vacancies. And I
Just tell us how many votes.
the person received 7 votes. I'm very sorry. That I can't pronounce it. Stormwater Management Advisory Commission, you have 1 vacancy, no nominees. The Substance Use Advisory Commission, the ballot says 1 vacancy, but it's actually 2 vacancies. And both nominees, F. Lynn Williams and Ryan Johnson, received 8 votes, so both would be appointed. The next item, nominations, let me get to that. The Greater Raleigh Convention and Visitors Bureau, you received a letter of resignation from Steve Burns, who is an at-large member. the Greater Raleigh
So
Convention.
can I just jump in and nominate the gentleman? that
Sure,
was-
Nagaraj, yeah.
Thank you.
I'll co-nominate him with you.
Okay. All righty, then the next Environmental Advisory Board, you have one vacancy due to the resignation of Beverly Clark.
I'd like to nominate Colleen Sullins for that.
Colleen.
Sullins, Sullins.
And that's all I have.
Okay. Madam Attorney?
I have nothing, thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk?
You received several sets of minutes, I believe. I'm trying to catch up with you.
Move for approval.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, a motion is in order to enter closed session pursuant to GS 143-318-11A3 to consult with the city attorney to preserve the attorney-client privilege and to give instructions concerning the handling and/or settlement of a potential claim, including 1, City of Raleigh versus Suzanne McKinney Brooks at all Wake County Superior Court, and 2, Boylan Pierce Building LLC versus the City of Raleigh. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll move into closed session. City of Raleigh versus Suzanne McKinney Brooks et al., and the Boylan Pierce Building LLC versus the City of Raleigh. Meeting's adjourned.
What's the difference between a hurricane and a tornado? I'm Storm Meteorologist Jason Myers, and they are both a testament to Mother Nature's fury. They both